Okay. All right. So that's kind of where we've come from. Part one was looking at Jesus and also at the letters to the churches. Then part two, what did we just do for 12 weeks? We drew so many pictures and we're like, okay, but how good was that for you? Everybody's actually happy now. Oh my gosh, look at that, there's smiles. Okay, so we've drawn these pictures that we detested as we were doing it, but now that we've done it, we're looking back, we're going, wow, God, that was really good for me. I really see things better, right? Then what we did is we progressively went through it, overviews from different perspectives. One, we looked for segment divisions. Boy, my segment divisions, that was huge, right? Let's do a real quick recap on that part, because let's see if I can find my segment divisions. What did I do with that? Yeah, but it's not, yours isn't complete, but it isn't because I have now added more. When I was doing my homework for this review, I found more worship scenes. So I've added in like 3 more worships in there. If you didn't catch them, and when you were doing your homeworks, were you looking for worship? Remember, that was one of the things I had said, look for more worship places, because I may have missed some and I was really tired when I did it. Okay, all right, so let's talk about these segment divisions. This was probably my biggest aha for doing inductive Bible study in the book of Revelation. I think this literary breakdown of this book is what is key for you understanding what is being said in this book, right? So the first one was that simple one that God gives us in 1:19, those 3 segment divisions, what John saw, the things that are, and the things that shall take place after these things. The next segment division comes in chapter 7, where there's a parentheses. Does anybody remember what chapter 7 answers? Who can stand? At the end of chapter 6, there's a question, who can stand, right? So then chapter 7 answers that question. It's a lovely chapter. It makes total sense once you get it. And we're going to talk more in detail about some nuances also, or additional thoughts about those 2 groups that are segmented there for us. We'll do that later. Then it goes back in, it picks up in chapter 8, and it picks up with the last seal, right? The seal, and then it moves on. And then you hit another parentheses moment, which is chapter 10. What happens in chapter 10? The mystery of God is finished. Now, chapter 10, who shows up on the scene? A big angel, big strong angel, and he's got a book, a little tiny book, and he tells John he's going to eat it. It's going to make his stomach sour, but it's going to taste sweet. I've eaten some things like that. Okay, but the primary message in that chapter 10, let me open my observation work. You too, open your observation worksheet to chapter 10. You're going to want to mark your chapter in a specific way. What I did, this is still really messy. I haven't cleaned it up yet, but see how at the very top of my page, I just put parentheses around this section up here? That's to remind me this is a parentheses moment. So it's another segment division of sorts where a pause is made as they're going along progressively, systematically. Seal 1, seal 2, seal 3, they're moving through in that way, correct? And then they hit Revelation 10, and well, first we hit 7, there was a parentheses, same thing. Now we're hitting 10, another parentheses. And if you understand your parentheses, what you know is that's not a sequential order of events, it's fill-in information. He's giving you additional details. So you can't necessarily take what's said within the parentheses and place it right there on your timeline. But you can look at it and say, does it fit right there? Because some things will and sometimes it won't, right? We're going to see that when we get to our next parentheses, which the next real big parentheses, though, we have starts in chapter what? 12. 12:1 all the way through 15:4 is literally a big parentheses. What did we call that parentheses? The three signs. Okay. And what happens in the three signs is what? What do we see inside that huge several chapters? 12, 13, 14, and the first part of 15. Yeah, all the characters on the stage of this play that we're observing, right? These visions that he's having, we see the woman, we see the dragon, we see the two different beasts, right? And we also see angels, we see reaping of the earth, we see all kinds of things. And then it ends at the very end of it with speaking about the wrath of God that's going to come out, right? And then it closes with what in two little verses? I think it's 3 and 4 of 15. Yeah. Praise, another worship scene. Can you take worship and sequentially order it exactly where it is? No. What is praise and worship all about in the book of Revelation? What is being conveyed to us? It's giving us hope. It's giving statements of truth, right? Is it true that Jesus is going to rule and reign upon the earth? Yes. Is it true that Jesus is going to judge the dead? Yes. Do those both happen at the same time? No, because we know, where does judgment of the dead come? At the very, very end of the 1,000-year reign, right? But where does Jesus come to rule and reign? At the beginning of the 1,000 years. So you got 1,000 years between those two statements. And when you get into chapter 11, there's a worship. Back up to chapter 11, since go to chapter 11, the very end, because we're in 12:1 through 15:4 is that parentheses. Just before you enter into that, you see starting in verse 15 to 18, again, worship, right? And there's all these really funky statements. The kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of our Christ, and he will reign forever and ever. Now, if you're trying to make that fit on your timeline right then, where are we when we hit that praise and worship statement in 11? We're in the seventh trumpet. Is Jesus ruling and reigning in the seventh trumpet? No. When does he begin to rule? At the end of the whole 7 years, right? So that's where I think the biggest aha for me in this study this time through is understanding that when you hit worship statements, some of it could fit right there in your timeline, but some of it won't. And in this case, 15 through 18, it's like 3 different time spaces on a timeline. And then some of the information simply is just sort of, we give you thanks, O Lord God, the Almighty, who are, who were, because you have taken your great power and have begun to reign. These are fact statements, truth statements about God and about his authority, his sovereignty, who he is, what he's going to do, but that you can't necessarily sequentially order them from that worship statement. So if you mark your worship statements like I have, I highlighted them in a baby blue, put a little box around them, right? Just to let them stand out to me as I'm reading through. And that way, whenever I hit these little places of blue and puffy clouds, I go, oh, worship. So keep that in mind. This is worship statements, right? That helps you, okay? So we did that. Those are our parentheses segment divisions. We've determined, at least I have considered them to be segment divisions because they are pauses in the flow of your systematic unfolding of events, but these are drop-in points, okay? So 12:1 to 15:4 then covers all those people, those characters. Now within chapter 12, did you see this week that there are some things said in chapter 12 that are going to go on your timeline, and maybe even go on your timeline almost at this exact point where you are at the end of the 6th trumpet? We did, but we are going to have to, right, because in 12 it talks about the third woe. She did ask us to look for the third woe, and the only way we could do that is to go into 12, which is so confusing. The other thing that I think is confusing, we're just going to skip what she said. We've done it so we can move ahead. We're going to go ahead and go to 15 and finish up our 7th trumpet so that we have all the facts out on it, okay? Because I think that makes better sense. Even though we'll go back next week and start in chapter 12 and move forward as she has it designed. Just so that you all understand what she's doing here, the curriculum for part 3 has been written in such a way that a new student can drop in. Like Lois is coming back in and she's joining us. She is not going to have a lot of this stuff on the tip of her tongue right up front. So she's going to need a few weeks of reviewing and reading and doing homework to kind of get on board with us. And that's the design of these first 3 weeks: review, 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 so that we get back them up to speed with us. Okay. Okay, now the next segment division, and Lois will definitely need this chart. Oh, good, excellent, you've got it. Okay. Oh, good. All right, we're taking care of you, Lois. All right, 3 woes. So we did our 3 woes. Now we'll talk about those 3 woes, but that is one more that we're calling a segment division, even though it's not really a segment division. It's just she wants you to pay attention to the fact that there are 3 woes. Why do you think she did that? Pardon? Why do you think she wants you to pay attention to the fact that there are 3 woes at this point in our juncture of study? What insight do you gain from looking at back at the end of chapter? Let's see. We're looking at the last 3 trumpets. So where are we? We're in the 6th trumpet. So it's got to be, because what happens is she mentions these trumpets. Where's the first mention of the woes that are coming? Where is that at? Okay, there we go. Okay, so 8:30, yes. Okay, so I'm waiting because I don't know. Okay, everybody's on board. We're at 8:13. We see that the text for us says, woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth because of the remaining blasts of the trumpet of the 3 angels who are about to sound. Now, what does that do for you concerning the 3 woes? By trumpet 7, yes. And what we did see is that in 9:12, when the 5th trumpet finishes out, it says the first woe is past, right? When we got to the 6th trumpet in 11:14, it says now the 2nd trumpet is past, right? But we didn't see a statement at the end of the 7th trumpet that said now the 3rd trumpet is past, or the 3rd woe is past, right? But when we went reading, because we have already established that it's systematic, it's going to fall on the 5th, 6th, and 7th trumpet. What it does is it locks in for us understanding of order, how these things must be on your timeline, and that your 5th trumpet can't happen at the same time as your 6th trumpet because they're distinguished, and they distinguish them as 3. And we're going to talk a little bit about the use of cardinal verbiage in scripture. Actually, it applies to all languages. There isn't a language that I know of on earth that doesn't say if it says 1st, 2nd, 3rd, it means 1st, 2nd, 3rd, right? So we're going to talk about that. I did some word studies on that. Okay. So the reason she wanted you to have that as part of this segment division and to pay attention to it is that it helps you to lock in that there's a sequential order. Okay. It just establishes a pattern of objective observation that you can't really even argue with. Does that make sense? Okay, so that was the purpose for that one. Then the other one was this in the spirit. And this is one that last time I taught, I went, aha! But there are 4 in the spirit statements in the text. They are segment divisions. And do you remember how those are, what the pattern is in those? Do you remember? Yep. Very good. So the first one is details about the churches, and there's a bunch of them. How you get saved and what the requirements are and what God wants them to do, which is to repent. Then you get to chapters 4 to 16, and it's big picture. It's all about the things which shall take place after these things. And it specifically is addressing that sequential unfolding of the bowls or the seals, the trumpets, and then the bowls, right? Okay, then the third in the spirit is in chapter 17:3, and what happens starting in chapter 17 through 20. It's the segment division, and it's details, and it's details about what? God's wrath. And it not only addresses Babylon, but several. It talks about the Antichrist and the beast and the dragon and all these different entities that are these characters that were developed for us in that other sequence division of chapter 12 through 15, where it was the 3 signs, gave us all these characters on the stage. Well, now in 17 to 20, it tells you what's going to happen to those characters, how God is going to judge them. Then the last in the spirit is in 21:10, right? And what do you see there? Big picture. And it's a big picture about what? Our new heaven and new earth, right? All right. So that says, now I don't have my most current one. Let me look and see what I did with. It's going to be in my, right here, it should be. Well, I had it here. You know, that's just so strange. This happens to me occasionally. I have things. Yeah, that's a good idea. Did I pull it out already? No. Well, all right. I'm not gonna worry about it right now. I'll address them as I see them. I'll send you the email with them, but I have an update on where all of those worship scenes are, but we do see some of them here in. We saw worship in chapter 4 and 5. Those were obvious, right? You're in heaven, you're in the throne room, they're worshiping God, then they're worshiping Jesus, and those two. So those are 2 chapters. Then in chapter 11, that's the one we were just talking about, where it covers on a timeline pretty much from beginning to end of history. He who is, who was, who is to come, and it talks about he's ruling, and then it talks about him judging the dead. So you get the full spectrum of it, but it's all worship. It's just making fact truth statements. Then in 15:3 to 4, it closes that parentheses of 12:1 to 15:4 with a couple of verses again of worship. All right. Then you see another worship in chapter 19, and that chapter actually breaks down very nicely into 2 paragraphs, and it shows you the destiny of 2 women. There's the woman who is the harlot, and there's the woman who is us, the church. And so that it shows us, but they are worship statements. It shows you they're before the throne, the 4 living creatures are present, the 24 elders are there, and it literally uses the words worship and praise in the writing of the text. So those are the things that I think really have been foundation, and that's what we just came out of in part 2, is laying all these foundations of seeing how does this book flow. How, when you drop into the text, you need to understand your literary work. In worship scenes, you need to know it's worship. If it's a parenthesis, you need to take it out of the timeline, read the information, glean fact truths, but then you need to go back to your sequential order and see where do those fact truths fit in your sequence. They don't always fit right where it's stated, right? Okay, so that was part 2. Now we're into part 3. Part 3 is, again, the first 3 weeks are going to be all about review. Yay. But the good thing is you are going to get to answer some questions or ask questions as we go along in this. No, no, you're going to give me your answers. That's how this works. Okay, so yeah, you were trying really hard. One of the things, though, that I want to see here, here's this. Yeah, I know. Yeah, and he always responded to the rich man. So who do you think, right? What do you think? Yes, I know it. I had teachers like that in school too, and I just hated it. I really, really did not like it at all. Okay, I've got too many pieces of paper up here, you guys. How are you doing? Okay, so let's start with one of the things we discussed early in our study in part 2 was the representation of various kinds of numbers in the text, right? Like if you see the number 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, and each of them have a symbolic message that hold true no matter where you are in the scripture, right? 3 is symbolic of what? The Trinity and holiness, completeness. So anytime you see a sequence of 3 things, sometimes literally right within the text, he'll list 3 things, which you know then is that's a completeness. That's why we have the 3 signs, completeness. And you have what? The 3 woes, completeness, exactly. So that was one other things that we needed to remember. 3, 4, remember, represents what? The earth or creation, right? 6 is symbolic of who? And they'll have a mark upon them. What? 6, 6, 6. 3 of them that they're man, exactly, human, that it's man. And it's literally depicting sin and rebellion of man, right? Okay, so that was another little point that we did cover, and I wanted to just remind you that we did that already. So now we are starting in we went back and began in chapter 4 and 5 for this week's homework. We're not going to write any of this on the board, but we're just going to kind of go through and cover any points that you needed to have clarified at this point. You should be at this point have nice paragraph titles made, right? So that you see the flow of thought. In chapter 4, you have 1 and 2 opens with kind of an opening statement, right? After these things I looked. Now, what's interesting in this book is constantly there's this switch back and forth between I saw and it was in the heavens, or I saw and it was on the earth, right? And a lot of the ones that are in the heavens have to do with worship. Okay, so keep that in mind too as well. But in this case, he looked and he says, I looked, there was a door standing open in heaven. The first voice which I had heard like the sound of a trumpet speaking with me, saying, come up here and I will show you what must take place after these things. So we now know, starting in 4, we've entered our 3rd segment division from that chapter 1 verse 11 outline that God gives to us, right? We also know what do we see when we're standing before that throne? What is present in that throne room? The elders and the living creatures and God, and okay. And when we discuss those 24 elders, what is our conclusion about what we think they might be representative of? Maybe. Okay, so she's saying it might be Old Testament, New Testament patriarchs, okay? And if it's speaking of the, quote, patriarchs, then in another way of saying that would be, would you say that they are representative of believers in the Old Testament and the New Testament? Because we know it's not unbelievers, correct? Unbelievers would not be in that presence. But if you're looking here and you're seeing John now being ushered into the presence of God, he's standing in that throne room. He's surrounded by believers, old and new, right? Testament believers. And the outline has told us before he was in the church age, but now these are the things which shall take place after these things. So if he's ushered into that moment and what he's supposed to be conveying is the things that are going to take place after these things, what we're looking at is the throne room at what point? After these things, sometime in the after these things, right? So it's going to begin sometime when the church age ends on to the end of age. We are now getting a pictorial image of the throne room. The believers are present with God. God is in our midst. We are with him. We are worshiping him, right? And then there's the 4 living creatures. And again, we said the 4 represents what? It's creation and all the things, right? So 4 living creatures itself actually even gives you the clue that it's talking about the things that God has created. All of his creation is there worshiping God. Yeah. That's very good observation. Huh? Well, it would be kind of weird, but maybe. Yeah, oh, I could do it too. I see myself there all the time. Yeah. But I think it's beyond that, don't you? I mean, even though we could say literally, oh, it's just the 12 patriarchs, which are the leaders of the 12 tribes, and it's the 12 apostles. But we've really kind of come to see already, just through our observations of everything we've looked at in the book of Revelation, that we are moving. He literally, through the outline of this book, has taken us from the things which is where we are right now, the church age. And now he's taking him forward forward in history, right? And he's saying, now after these things, after the church age, now, John, where are you? John is now standing in the presence of God in the throne room. And with him are these representatives of all peoples, old and new, who have died in faith or have been raptured or whatever, but they are the believers who are now in the throne room of God. And what is the purpose for demonstrating that to John right up front before he starts into this book? How would that affect knowing what's coming up in this book? How does knowing that you're going to be standing in the presence of God, worshiping God, the holy angels, the four living creatures, the Spirit of God is there, Christ is there. We're going to get into that in the next chapter, right? How does that affect you in what you're about to receive? There's this hope, and there's confidence, and there's a peace in your heart now, because rather than being fearful of looking at all these things that are about to come upon the earth and all this judgment which God's going to show him, what you get, and this is how I love to read all books, I want to know the end before the beginning. I want to go to the end and find out how is it going. If it's going to have a happy ending, I'll read the book. If it's not, I won't read it, right? Although I don't read any books, so I kind of lie on that. Okay. All right. So chapter 4 gives us an establishment of one most important central truth, and that is about God. What is it? What is your title? God is sitting on his throne, right? And he is being worshiped by those who love him. So those who love him will be with him in that time frame after these things. When we leave this church age, you and I, we will be with God, right? We will have him in our presence. I just love that. That's a beautiful thing. Chapter 5 then kind of follows on in a pattern, but it adds an additional truth, which is actually probably more central to the book message on the whole than even chapter 4, although the companionship of the two together show you the triune Trinity of God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And it shows you that they're collaborating together. They each have a designed role. But Christ's role in this is real significant, particularly to this message, because the message on the whole is about what? This scroll, right? And what's written in it and the things which are going to take place. And so in chapter 5, what do we learn in chapter 5 that's significant for us? The Lamb is worthy. Why is he worthy? Because he was slain. He gave his life. Did you notice that that place where it says that he stood as if slain, right? Which literally identifies your understanding of what it means that he was slain, that it's really not talking about the fact that he was killed. What is it really emphasizing? He's now standing, what? He's resurrected. So it's not, the emphasis is that yes, he shed his blood, but that he then also resurrected, that he's now the living God who stands in the presence of God the Father. Okay, so worthy are you to take the book, break its seals, for you were slain and purchased for God with your blood men from every tribe, tongue, people, and nation. You have made them to be a kingdom and priests to our God. Why is that significant for us as we are about to go into all the hard that comes next? Yeah, we know where we, the church, are going to fall in this, because what is it that we notice after we leave chapter 5? The church is not really mentioned at all. Those who have a viewpoint that the church is present, I think they have a big hurdle to leap over, in that where is the church and where is the provision for the church stated in the writing of so much detail, right? They talk about the unbelievers, they talk about the Jews, right? They talk about these entities that are going to be in place, these rulers, these 10 toes or the 10 horns, right? That are going to show up and make a collaborative coalition. But you don't see the church mentioned until when? At the very end, when what happens? Jesus comes back. So and where are we when he comes back? We're following him, which means we've already been with him. We're not mentioned anywhere after chapter 5, and we are only seen coming with him when he returns. I think that's a powerful apologetic observation, that you just write that on the paper and don't add to it, don't take away from it. But that to me is one very strong indicator that the church is not present during this time for me. Okay. The church is not mentioned, and therefore we're not. If we were present, would you expect in all of the details that we've been given that the church would be told, church, this is what you're going to be doing during this time. This is how I'm going to provide for you. This is how I'm going to protect you. This is where you're going to go or what you're going to do. One group he does talk about in chapter 12, he says the woman who gives birth, what happens to her children? They flee into the mountain. God gives them command. And in this part, starting in lesson 4, we're going to be looking into Matthew. We're going to look at how the command has been given and how the reference is made back to Daniel. In chapter 5, you're going to go back and look at that. We have 1 through 3 is all review, which is what we're doing right now. But 4, you're going to go back and look at Matthew 23 and 24 and begin doing timelines. Okay. In 5, you're going to add in all those Daniel references, which we've already studied. So for all of us, it's just review, review, review. Okay. In lesson 6, you're going to do a synoptic comparison of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. I am going to send you out my worksheet for you to work off of. Kay doesn't do it this way. She views Luke as a reference to this 70 AD time frame. But I just want you to look at it from a synoptic observation viewpoint, just so you can make a decision on that for yourself. The good thing is this, whether you think Luke is 70 AD or whether you think it's the end of the age, it doesn't matter. Both happen. Both 70 AD has happened, and it looked very much like what is said in Luke, right? But I do think that there's some integrity concerning how you look at the synoptic gospels on the whole. They either are synoptic or they are not. And if the other two are written at the time when Jesus is preaching and they are speaking of the end of the age, then why wouldn't Luke be also? And when you compare them, their verbiage is almost word for word. So I'm going to send this out to you. I designed my own parallel observation worksheet for you. I lined things up pretty good for you. And then all you have to do is go in and mark your keywords in all 3 passages in the same way. So that if you see him say, and they were sitting on the mountaintop and they asked Jesus these questions, you're going to mark those things in all 3 the same. And as you progressively go down this all the way, you're going to hit one place where it's going to say, and when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of through Daniel the prophet, flee. And you're going to see that in all 3 of them. So when you see it in that way, I think you view it differently. And I just think that it was one of those things where they forgot to do all their observations, parallel. Synoptically. Duh, right? Okay. We're going to look at Matthew, Luke, but then we're going to hit the subject matter about salvation for Israel, because what do you think is God's goal? Where are we headed in this? What is God doing through these 7 years? Restoration for who? For Israel, the nation. Okay. Now, along with that, intertwined with that is also the work of God in the individual heart for salvation for those people. So what we are going to be doing is spending, it looks like 3 weeks, lesson 8, 9, and 10, and we are going to parse out how God deals with the individual for salvation, but also how he has a promise to Israel as a nation for salvation, and how he's going to make both of those happen without violating any of his doctrines concerning how an individual gets saved, right? But yet God will also fulfill his promised word to Israel to save all Israel, as it says in Romans. So you're going to hit Romans, you're going to hit Matthew, you're going to look at 1 Corinthians as well, by the way, and that's the rapture passage, right? The resurrection. And then in lesson 11, we're going to consolidate all of that onto one big long timeline. But we're going to be doing timelines starting in 4 and in 6 and in 7 and then again in 11. And I probably will do more than that even. I kind of like to hang on to those timelines so that we don't lose perspective. I'm so visual in the way that I learn that I need that timeline, and I need you to show me where does it fit on there so that I don't get lost, right? Okay. Okay, so, oh, really? Is that all? 15? Oh, 50. 15? Forget it. You're just as much of a taskmaster as Lois was, man. That's true. That's true. Okay. All right. So now what we want to do is we want to look at what you did for your homework. Now, she had you fill this little chart out here, right? Starting in chapter 6 with the seals, then you go to the trumpets and then to the bowls, correct? For today, all we're going to do is look at some of the basics concerning this. And we won't get everything written up there, but it's not important because we've done this already. I don't know if we did it twice even, I think we had 2 weeks on it because we did half and then half. This is what we're doing this time too. So let's start with chapter 6 and talk about these things that we observed. We see in chapter 6, we open with the breaking of the seals, correct? All right. What do we see? It happens when the first seal is broken. What appears? A white horse. Now, are there any discussions about the white horse imagery, who that is or what that means? What would you like to convey or talk about right now concerning that? Okay, it literally tells us that, right? He comes to conquer, right? The rider has a bow, no arrow, so that tells you that it's some kind of conquering, but conquering without war, right? He's given a crown, and what does that tell us? He's given this authority is allocated to him or given to him or is he a king? I mean, would he be like in our yes in our world today it would be basically some kind of a world leader, right? And we also know from having done our Daniel study that it starts out with 10 toes on that statue in Daniel, right? And those toes represent what? Kings. So it starts out with 10 kings somehow. And Daniel tells us that what happens to the 10 is another one shows up, one called the what? Little horn. And what does the little horn do to those 10 kings? 3 of them he uproots and he supplants them basically, and you end up with 8. But the initial imagery is 10. That's why you keep hearing 10 kings, 10 horns, right? All right, so here we see a conquering now. He's given a crown. Could you see this fitting into that imagery there of the time frame? We also are going to be looking in our weeks ahead at Daniel 9, where the prophetic word is given to Daniel concerning his nation. Daniel, this is for you and your people. Now, who is Daniel's people? The Jews. It's for the Jewish nation. And he says, concerning the Jewish nation, this is what's going to happen. And then he unfolds that prophetic message about what the things God is going to accomplish through doing for that nation, what he is going to do, how he literally fulfills his words and his promises to them. And in doing so, according to Ezekiel, what does he prove to the world? The world will know that I am the Lord, right? They will know that I am the Lord. And so here we see this crown. The white horse, the one thing I wanted to mention about that white horse, though, because it becomes a possible conflict for some people, and that is they see that white horse that comes up again in chapter 19. And who is that? Jesus. Now, if you see here, he comes up a white horse here. He's given a crown. Is Jesus? Right. Right. So what you have to do is help people distinguish why this white horse is not the white horse in chapter 19. That's true. By definition, one is a laurel leaf and the other is a ruling a scepter, right? Okay. So he's given a crown and he goes out to conquer. Okay, and this is followed then by what? A red horse. And the red horse, what happens there? Yeah, it's granted to him to take peace. Granted to take peace from the earth. Now, when Jesus returns on his white horse, does he come to take peace from the earth? No, he comes to bring peace to the earth. He certainly does come in first with warring, but then he establishes a kingdom of peace. What follows the red horse? The black horse. And what follows his establishing of taking peace? What happens? It's war. And then after war, well, there's the red horse. Oh, this is war, sorry. War. And then the black horse is famine. He has scales in his hand. And it talks about barley and wheat, right? Being expensive. And it says, do not touch the oil and wine, do not touch. Well, and you know what one person said, and I don't know if this is an accurate understanding or not, but I'm going to throw it out there for you, was when you look at the oil and the wine, it talked about how the wealthy will still have what they want. The wealthy will not be harmed, but who will be? The people who just need bread on their table. So that's a possibility. I don't know, because I was curious about this too. Why not touch the oil and the wine? Oil could be, it looks to me like because it's coupled with wine, it's the kind of oil you consume, right? It's not oil as in filling your gas tanks and yeah, oil and vinegar. Yeah, right, exactly. So I think this oil has to do with consumption, but in this consumption here, it says the barley and wheat become very expensive. Yeah, okay. No, that's actually food for one person for a day is what they are. That's right. It's a day's labor for enough food for really one person. Think about, that's why it's called famine. These are going to be people who are going to be starving at that point. So now we can back up to the white horse and say, does this look like the kind of thing God would bring when he comes? When the white horse in chapter 19 comes, he doesn't bring war and then famine. And then, by the way, what follows that is the ashen horse. And what do we see here? Death. Right? And he says on that ashen horse, he's given authority to kill what? Okay, pestilence, sword, yeah, right, and disease. Yeah, you guys are. Lois is going to wonder what we did while she was away. We love it. Okay. Okay. So over here, what we actually have here is, I want to go back and kind of finalize what we see here. We have a promise of peace here, right? He comes to with a bow, which means it's not aggression. It's probably political finesse or politics, right? Correct? And so he starts out with the promise of peace, is given a crown, and he goes out to conquer the world, right? He wants everyone underneath his authority, but he thinks he's going to do it without anybody resisting. Well, then what follows it then is this red horse that comes is granted to take peace from the earth, because there are going to be some people who are going to rebel against this. And then and apparently this is the kind of I would call this a world war that's going to affect a lot of people. It's not going to be minutely located. Then we have the black horse, and he brings famine because of the war. The food becomes scarce. And then now we begin to see this. So when you look at the events that happen here, we can see here that things are in good shape and quiet, and initially anyway. When you go back to that Daniel 9, you're going to come to see that there's a time when this little horn is going to rise up and make this coalition, and he's going to make a promise, right, to them. And what is he going to tell Israel that they can do? They can live in peace and do what? And build their temple and worship at their temple. So here's this time here, but then it's followed with all this that becomes aggressively worse. And beginning right here, you start to see what happening to the earth? Harm, right? There's going to be harm coming to the earth. There's going to be war. There's going to be famine. There's going to be death. All right, seal number 5, then we see what? Souls under altar. Now, this is interesting to me, because if you think of this from our sequence of the unfolding, these are the things which shall take place after these things. Now we're seeing souls. What have we just seen? We've seen war, famine, and death. Now these are souls that are under the altar. And he goes on to tell them that they're wanting to know how long, O Lord, until you avenge our blood, correct? So apparently the emphasis here is blood that has been shed and death that has occurred at what time in our history? Starting with this 7-year time frame, the things which shall take place after these things. Now, could some of those souls be from the Old Testament? Yes. Did we have martyrs from the Old Testament? Yes. But what is the emphasis here? In context of this book, what is the emphasis of what's going on here? The tribulation time. So the primary emphasis is these are people who have been promised peace, but then came war, famine, and death. And now these are the souls under the altar, and they're crying out saying, Lord, how long until you avenge our death? Okay, so just keep that in mind. And I'm not locking it in to exclude anybody, but I'm just saying that's the primary emphasis. Am I correct on that? Okay. All right. So now souls are under the altar. They're crying out. Yes, he is. And that was going to be my next point, because he says, just wait a little longer until what happens? Until the full number. So what does that tell you about the people who are dying underneath these events so far? They're not done yet. And there's going to be more. Okay, so souls are crying out, how long until you avenge our blood? They're given, here they are given a robe again, given a white robe. And we already know what those white robes symbolically represent. Well, they wouldn't be there if they didn't already have the robe of righteousness for salvation, correct? Justification, we know, is an established thing. So what we see here is these are being shown that they're going to be given a robe of righteousness for their what? For their sanctification work, for the deeds that they did in their faith, okay? Many of them who were beheaded or killed simply for their faith. Because what's interesting is, if you think of this politically, what's going to be going on here and where we're heading with this man right here, who is the Antichrist, he is at a point in time is going to say, you must take the mark of my kingdom, and if you don't, you won't buy or sell, right? And so we know that even here, even though he is pretending to be their friend and pretending to be a friend to the Jews in particular, that he is an aggressor, and he is a hater of life and of anyone who would seek for worshiping God rather than him, right? So along this way of war, famine, and death, he is actually allowing persecution, in particular against Christians, not Christians, against believers, people who will have come into faith during this time frame. All right, what are we going to call those people? Because they're not the church. They're tribulation saints. Keep that in mind always, that when you start talking about people who have come into faith during the time of the tribulation, that yes, they're Christians, but they're not the church. These are a distinctive dispensation. God calls them tribulation saints. Okay. Okay. Crying out, how long, O Lord? Given a white robe, told to wait. Until the rest who will die or will be killed, he said, which tells you they were killed. It's an act of murder that took place against them. Okay, until they do it. So that's in verse 11 of chapter 6. Right, they didn't necessarily, yeah, absolutely. This is a bloodshed, not dying of starvation. Exactly, they're martyrs. I'm going to put this on here. Tell me how to spell it. MARTYERS. Okay, I was hoping I hit that right. Okay, all right. Then the sixth seal is what? A great earthquake. A great earthquake. And so on here it's the sun, the moon, and stars, the heavens in general, right? They darken, it says. And when you see by definition what it means that they darken, it means that 1/3 of the day, is that the one that says that 1/3 of okay, that's the next one. Okay, that's going to be down here then. Okay. Okay, the sky is split. Every mountain is moved. And island moved. That's amazing, isn't it? And I wonder what it means the sky is split. No. Okay, so that's in the sixth one. So now we basically covered chapter 6 at this point. So our title for chapter 6 is very simple, right? 6 seals are broken, right? And you break it down for paragraphs according to 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. So now what I want to do is talk to you about this language thing. We might come across this again over and over if we don't get this straight right up front. Okay, yes. Disaster or earthquake. Oh yeah, this is good. Men cry. Yes, it is important. Men cry out. Who can stand? Who is able to stand? Okay. Okay. So there we got that little statement. Let's look at it together. That's a good point to bring up, and this is a good time to talk about it. Okay. So when you are looking at the unfolding of all of the other things and you're trying to fill things in systematically, right, according to them, we are in the systematic flow, correct? But in this case, what we see is who is saying that the great day of God's wrath has come? Men are saying it. Why are they saying it? Because look at what's going on. Exactly. It's like, well, duh. Right. It looks really bad. But what's interesting to me is you haven't seen anything yet. And that's what's interesting. They're already looking, but it also introduces to us another point within the flow of this message. And that is concerning these men. What do you see going on in the hearts of these men, even though all these horrible things are happening? They're not going to repent. These are not, they're hiding from him. They literally say, let the rocks fall on us and hide us from the presence of God, right? So first and foremost, it's these are men who are unaware of God's real plan. They don't know the scriptures yet, obviously. If they did, they would know this wasn't the wrath, right? So these are unbelieving men. They are men who are trying to hide from God, and they are men who are themselves, because things are looking so bad to them, they're saying that the great day of God's wrath has come. But it's men saying it. It's not God declaring it, and it's not the heavens declaring it. It is these men who are trying to hide from him. And in there, then it finalizes it in verse 17 with this question: for the great day of their wrath has come, who is able to stand? So then we hit chapter 7, and what do we have? We have a parenthesis, and in that parenthesis of chapter 7 answers that question, who can stand? Let's talk about this, because this is very cool. Chapter 7, verse 1 to 8 covers who? The 144,000. What do we know about the 144,000? They're Jews, because they come from all those tribes, right? What else? You might want to even crack open your pages over to chapter 14, where you see the 144,000 again. The first time you see them there, it says you see them, and where are they? On the earth. Where are they in 14? In heaven. Have you noticed the switch? But they're talking about the same ones. But in 14, you can read some of the information and get more details. What do you see about them in 14? I'm sorry, say it again. They're standing up, right? So they're in heaven. They're standing on Mount Zion. I heard a voice from heaven, right? They sang a new song. Where did they sing it? In verse 3? Before the throne, before the four living creatures. That's how you affirm they're in heaven, right? Okay, and it says these are the ones who have been purchased from the earth. So what does that mean to be purchased from the earth? Taken up or raptured or something, right? Because now they're in the, and if they've been purchased, how have they been purchased? By the blood of the Lamb, right? Purchase. I actually put a blood drop on that purchase so that I would catch that. I put a red cross and then put a drop of blood. In other words, Christ purchased them from the earth. These are the ones who have what? Not been defiled by who? Oh, women. So who are they? They're men. 144,000 Jewish men. They've not been defiled by women, right? Did you notice that? Oh. Well, you know, the first clue, if you go back to chapter 7, it calls them sons of Israel. So it actually says that, but some people would say, well, that could still be the general population of the sons, meaning just people. But no, not when you get to 14, where it says they've not been defiled with women, for they have kept themselves chaste. These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. Now, who is a person that follows the Lamb? They're disciples, right? They love God. They're his workers. They're on board working for Christ. At this time in history, if they are purchased by Christ, they are it says that they follow the Lamb. No lie is found in their mouth. So what do you think their ministry is? They're preaching the gospel, right? 144,000. So now go back to 7. So we kind of built up that understanding. If you did not do that, make a note to yourself to go back and accumulate your list a little more thoroughly. They've been purchased from the earth. They've not been defiled with women. They're purchased as first fruits to God and the Lamb. Yes, the name of the Father written on their foreheads. And what did it say in the letters to the 7 churches? One of the promises to the overcomer is what? That we would have the name of God on the forehead, right? All right, so now in here in Revelation, go back to 7, and what we see then is it says concerning them when they get sealed. When do they get sealed? Before the earth is harmed. At this point, looking on what we have here, when would that be? When would that have to be? Sometime before, either in the first seal or before it, probably at this time, right? What would be the trigger that would cause 144,000 Jewish men to suddenly be committed to God and his word, and that Jesus would purchase them with his blood? The rapture, okay? And what else is going to happen at that time? The Antichrist is going to do what? He's going to come putting on a crown. He's going to cause a coalition, and he's going to promise to the Jews what? You can, okay. What verse should come to a Jewish man's mind if they know the scriptures? When you see the abomination of desolation was one, but also what did we know is going to happen is there's going to be a coalition come together of kings, 10 kings. Daniel chapter 9, right? So you start putting all these pieces together, you're going, okay, so where's the logical place to put the 144,000 being sealed before the earth is harmed? Back here, once the coalition has happened, they go ding, 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 Daniel, Ezekiel, all these other, and not only that, the rapture of the church is probably, right. They're gonna begin by divine help, by the Spirit of God falling upon them. God's preordained these men. He's already examined their hearts. He knows who they are that will turn and follow him in this faithful way that's declared for us. These are people who are then going to see all these things happening right here, and God's going to seal them. I think it's got to at least be here or before.
And it says in the other chapter we just read that they're the first fruits. So are they the first killed in the tribulation?
Okay, no, but let's talk about that. What does that mean, the first fruits? First fruits of what? If they're Jewish males that come into faith, and what's God's divine plan for all of this? To do what? To bring who into salvation? The Jewish nation. So if they are 144,000 Jewish men who are brought into faith and sealed, they're the first fruits of what? The salvation of the Jewish nation. Doesn't that make sense? Isn't that awesome? Okay, so let's put here Revelation 7, 1 through, is it 9 or 8? 8, 1 to 8, and it's going to be 144,000 sealed. Now, that is my choice. You can put it where you want. I noticed Kay on the chart she gave us placed it somewhere else. Why did she do that? Because she placed it where it fell in the sequential order of things. She didn't take into account that this is a parentheses, answering the question to number 6. So she put it right here on your chart. I know. Look at how much of the earth has been harmed. Yeah. Well, you've also got pestilence and disease. You've got famine, which means the crops are not growing. You've got war over here, and the earth gets harmed. Okay, if you want to put it here, that'll be fine. 144,000 then are marked right here, and then that still begins the first fruit of. You can do that. I'm not going to argue that out. Okay, thank you. You went right there. You did it. You jumped ahead a little bit, but yes, okay. What's going to happen? What's going to happen for us? We're not there yet. And that's why I'm trying to be really generous in all this, because I want everyone to have time. What's going to happen is once we do a timeline, we have 2 time frames to work with: 1,260 days, 1,260 days. And there's a time frame that they're going to be prophesying, and then they're going to be taken up. We see this in chapter 11, or was it 11, wherever it was, and they're going to be taken up. And then also the 2 witnesses are also going to go up, and then there's another 1,260 days that falls after. In order for these men to do their 1,260 days of work, it has to start at the beginning. But we would come to that later. Anyway, all right, now, okay, so 20 minutes, but we've gone halfway. Okay, I want to give you a little insight. If we don't get through all this, you guys are not going to hate me, right? Because we do this every week. Okay, but thank you for telling me. Okay, I want to talk to you about ordinal numbers. I know Amanda and I had a conversation about this quite a ways back now. It's been several weeks. She's a sharp troop and she's way ahead of all of us. But I went online and I went online and I researched how cardinal and ordinal numbers are interpreted in both Hebrew and Greek. I looked at both because they were on the same sheet, right? So it was easy to do. But what was really cool is they're interpreted exactly the same no matter what language you're in, okay? So let me just read what it says, okay? And I listed for you on my sheet, if you decide you need to have a copy of it, my two sites, both sites gave exactly the same information. So it was really simple. Okay, cardinal numbers are used for counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Numbers, if you're counting and you say, I have 5 stars or I have 5 Cheerios on my plate, do I have 5 or do I have less or more? And does it mean I had to put 1 down, 2 down, 3 down, 4? They come in that order. 5 is 5. 5 isn't 3, 5 isn't 2, 5 isn't 1. So, but that isn't the part that we want to, I know, you know what? Oh, you know why? Well, I'm saying this because there are arguments about how the unfolding of this occurs. And so if you are not willing to look at the defined definitions for how numbers are used and stay within what the rules or the boundaries are for that, then you're going to have trouble, because you're going to want to take some things and squish them all together underneath what I know. One of the questions was because in chapter 11 we hit that place where is it the seventh, hold on, let me look at it, the sixth trumpet, when the 7th one sounds, then do all the bowls happen in the 7th trumpet? Well, this is going to explain to you why that can't be, that they have to be sequential as it's said. Okay, cardinal numbers are used for counting. We understand how to count. We count starting with 1 and move forward. Okay, ordinal numbers are used to define position in a series. That's how it's used, to define position. Okay, so if you and I are positioned, you're there, I'm here, Susan, sorry. Okay, so we've got Kristen, Katie, Susan, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, right? They fall in that order, and it tells us you're in 1st place, I'm in 2nd, you're in 3rd place. I can't say later on that when we raced, I came in 1st if I'm in the 2nd position. You can't put me in the 1st. You have to leave me in the position I'm assigned to according to the cardinal number that I have been assigned. I'm 2nd, 1st, 2nd, 3rd. Are you following what I'm saying? Because it's just the rule of how we understand numbers. So ordinal numbers are used to define position in a series. Ordinal numbers give order in which something happens, right? Such as 1st, 2nd, 3rd. Ordinal numbers have always have the form of being an adjective. What's important about that is that means it's descriptive. It describes for you 1st, 2nd, 3rd. In your mind as an adjective, it's describing where I am in the order. So I'm in a defined position. It's in a sequential order. It has to be in a sequential order, and I can't move out of my sequential order. So when God says in his word, he broke the 1st seal, and then he broke the 2nd seal, and then, right? And this is how the whole unfolding of all of these seals, trumpets, and bowls unfold. And the establishment of how this is unfolding is established right from the beginning. You aren't going to have death all the way back here in the 1st seal when the 1st seal is open, because he's coming in conquering by peace and diplomacy. So it has to be 1st seal, then the 2nd seal, then the 3rd seal. Why? Because that's the rule of how you interpret understanding of cardinal numbers, or ordinal numbers rather. So ordinal numbers are 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. We had the same problem when we studied Genesis. on the first day, on the second day, on the third day, right? And how do you define a day? And are they in that order? And what's really cool when you study all that is how God gives those orders in the order that they are. And it actually refutes all of the faith systems of the Jewish or of the Egyptians. And you can't have one without the other one happening first. So you have to have light before you can have trees and grass, right? So anyway, so that was interesting to me. So if you wanted to go online and read this, you can just Google, and it's what I did. How are ordinal numbers used in biblical Greek? Because we're in the New Testament, it's the Greek text, okay? And I got these two sites. They both said exactly the same thing. I actually read several sites, but this one was simple. Some of them get really in depth because they're teaching you the language, and I didn't want to go that far. I just wanted to understand, how do you interpret first, second, third, fourth? You have to handle them according to the language intent. Okay. So I hope that will help clarify that part of it. But even beyond that, it becomes really obvious the further we get in this. Next week, we're going to do an actual timeline, and we'll see it a little bit more clearly. Okay, so now we're ready for the seventh seal. And we jump forward then to chapter 8, because 7 was let me finish 7. The first portion, 1 through 8, was the 144,000 that were sealed, correct? Then what do you see in the second half? The great multitude. And where do they come from? And he asks him a question, who are these people, right? And he says, Lord, you know. And then what does he answer? These are the ones who what? Came out of the great tribulation. So where do you place this great multitude on our timeline? Where will it go? Has to be at the very end in the 7th bowl, right? Because it's the totality of the great tribulation. They come out of the great tribulation, and they are going to enter into the eternal kingdom and into eternal glory with Christ, right? So you're going to place them, and I don't have a spot for it here, but we'll just put it right here. We'll say 7th bowl, and it's going to be chapter 7, 9, and how far does it go? 15, 18, something like that. It goes all the way to the end, doesn't it? Yeah, through 17. Yeah, 19 to 17. Okay, so, and these are the great multitude, right?
Every nation, all tribes, all...
Yes, basically it's everybody who is going to be saved. Now, having done that, if that's at the very end, the 7th bowl, and I place this one over here at the very first seal, what does that also show you? What is God saying when he says, who can stand? Well, yes, but when he bookends the beginning all the way to the end, and they scoffingly are saying, who can stand? Anybody I mark or anybody I call into faith, and some of them will die in faith, some of them will be sealed and preserved for my purposes. But what this is really declaring is the sovereignty of God over that. That question is, God can do what God can do. He can do whatever he chooses to do with the individuals. And in this case, he's saying there will be those who stand, and I am in control of it from beginning to end. Isn't that an amazing picture once you do it that way? I was kind of excited when I saw that on my board. Okay, 10 minutes, no. Okay, chapter 8, the 7th seal. This one's real good. What do we got? Now we're in chapter 8. What do you see there? Silence in heaven, right? What else? Yeah, this one is 7 trumpets given to how many? 7 angels. So here's an interesting thing for you to do. I don't know what color you're going to mark these little girls and boys, but say, let's just pretend on these 7 trumpets, which are going to come down here, correct? Every one of these are going to be trumpets that are sounded by who? The angel that is pink. And then there's going to be another pink angel here because it's the same group, right? And when you do that, and then up here, who was it that opened these seals? The Lamb. Okay, I'm showing you a little pattern here because what's going to happen is when you come to the bowls, which we'll hit next week, it's going to be, if we don't hit here, right here, 7 more angels are going to come out, and the 4 living creatures are going to give to them 7 bowls. So they're going to be what angels? Same angel, this pink one? No, and it's not, it's going to be a different angel. Let's see if I can find a different color. How about a green one? So when you get down to the bowls, it's going to be these angels opening. And that also helps you to understand sequentialness to this. They aren't the same angels doing the same task, and they're not all doing it at the same time. It's very distinctive angels. They're assigned a specific work to do. And it's this angels for the trumpets, and it's another set of angels for the bowls when you get there. Pardon? Oh, that one. Well, this one actually goes into here, but that's when they are presented. Up here, who is it? Well, yeah, there is, but we don't, and it's, that part's not important because what I'm trying to show, I'm sorry, but I understand what you're saying now, because what I'm just trying to do is to give you one more apologetic understanding for sequential order, that it's first, second, third, fourth. If your pink angel, when he's presented in the 7th seal by Jesus, Jesus opens the seal, the 7 angels come out, this pink angel is given a task, and he goes about these tasks in these trumpets. When the trumpets finish over here, you're going to have 7 angels appear in this 7th trumpet, and they're going to be given the bowls, and that's the green ones, the green angels. So by doing it that way, by color coding your angels differently, what you understand is you've moved to a new group of angels doing the next task on the sequence of order. And they're presented by someone different. Exactly. I mean, there's a lot of reasons it all begins to accumulate to make sense for you. First of all, you don't want to violate rules, your language rules. An ordinal number means first, second, third, fourth. They come in that order. But also the fact that there are different angels help you as well. Okay, so that being said, let's move on to finishing up this 7th seal. 7 trumpets are given, their 7 trumpets are given to 7 angels. These angels did not have their trumpets until this seal was opened. The seal was opened, then they appear and they are given their 7, the work that they're going to do down here. What else happens there? Prayers of the saints are added, right? Prayers added to incense, and it's cast to the earth. And now we have another earthquake. Yeah. Looking at 8:1 through 6. Oh, no. Do that later. Okay, now let's do the trumpets. Same thing with the trumpets. We can do this pretty quick. I think we can get through it. We see in the first trumpet, what happens? Hail and fire mixed with blood. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, right, burned up. Okay, just in case, all grass. Okay, so that's what we did last time. Remember last time when I did this chart for you, I drew a picture of the earth right here, correct? Now, the next one on the second trumpet, what happens there? Something like a mountain. Is
Third of the sea, third of the creatures, third of the ships.
thrown into sea. And then you get a third of the sea, a third of the creatures, and a third of the ships. Yep, you guys got it. And then again, so now I drew a picture here of the ocean so that I would remember that this is the picture. Now, why am I doing these pictures? What happens when you come to the bowls? They follow the same pattern. And if you draw a picture for yourself, you see the first bowl is also against the earth. You see the second bowl is going to be against the seas. And it's going to follow that pattern. And so having done all these drawings, having done all these charts that we've done so far is beginning to show us that there's sequence of order and sequence of pattern to things, which is really cool. Okay. The third trumpet is a great star.
It's fun to think that fun is the right word. The trumpet's like, it's the third, but that's like just the lower intensity. Like that's supposed to be the next one.
Yeah, it is.
That's just like your low intensity, and then the next one's
Yeah.
done.
Why do you think God is doing it this way? So what does this tell you about God's purpose?
He's still trying to like get people to turn their hearts.
Yeah. There are some people that are so stubborn, you have to really push them hard.
You right in there, it talks about how things happen, and they still harden their hearts and say, "Forget it." We're still like, and then get hit with all this stuff.
On one of my charts, I actually kept track of all of the places where they're in chapter 6, and men said, "Who's able to stand?" And they're hiding from the presence of God. Then in the seventh, in the trumpets, in the fifth angel, it says they have these locusts have power to hurt, and it says, but men won't repent. And even though they want to die but can't die, but they still won't repent. Then in the sixth angel, you have the angels at the Euphrates River. Again, it says in 9:20, they don't repent. Again, it says in verse here in the seventh. Now this is interesting. You hit the bowls, and what do these men say in the fourth bowl? They blaspheme God and they don't repent. In the fifth, they blaspheme God and they do not repent. And all the way to the seventh one, and it says, and they blaspheme God. But the fact that God adds those statements in there tells you what his agenda is, right? God's agenda is not to punish, it's not to harm, it's to try to push people far enough into desperation that they will look up and acknowledge that he is God, that they will repent and come to him. He wants all men to be saved. Okay, so we have a star, wormwood, and this is all about the rivers, right?
It's kind of opposite of what the devil was trying to do with Job.
Yeah.
Show you it gets real bad. And so even Job is you can make it through all this and still don't have to blaspheme.
So we have 1/3 of rivers and the springs of water. Water, yes, and many men die.
They're not famous men.
Oh yeah, probably. I do think that's a generic. I wish. Well, if they're a gentleman, they would give us the good water, right? On chapter 4. Okay, the fourth trumpet is what? 1/3 of stars, of sun, moon, and stars. And what happens? They're darkened. This is the one I was thinking of earlier. And what does it mean they're darkened? They don't shine, right? They don't shine.
So, but why does he make the distinction there? 1/3
For
darkened,
1/3.
is not
I do not know. I'm not exactly sure how this is going to work out, except that,
Then he goes on to say 1/3 night, and then day, same thing.
yeah. They don't shine for 1/3 of the day or night.
So, I see when you talk about a third, it's really one of two things. Intensity of light goes down by 1/3, but you still have the same number of hours, or it goes completely black for 1/3 more time.
Yeah, we don't know for sure. And you know what? We don't really know. And I don't know that there's really a way to definitively get there. I just think that there probably scientists could give you some options to think about. But this is the trumpet judgment, and it comes against, again, what? God's creation, against the nature. This is where it says in I think it's in Romans, where it says and the creation cries out, right, for its day of redemption. It wants to be renewed back to what God had created and designed it to be from the beginning. And this is going to be a place where God's going to take it to almost total destruction before then he will renew it in the new kingdom, in the millennial kingdom. But what's even better than that renewal is what's going to happen when we get into the new heavens and the new earth. It's all brand new. It has never been touched by disease or death or any kind of judgment at all. It's all going to be clean and fresh and in exactly the state that God's intended it to be for us. That's going to be awesome. Okay, the fifth trumpet, am I hitting it close? Am I getting close? Okay, we're at the bottomless pit. And in there are locusts that hurt men, right? Oh yeah, and women, girls and boys. But very interesting. It says it hurts men, and then it gives a qualifier without the seal. So what does that tell us? Well, or it's just saying within distinction that that particular group of men are set apart for work, and God protects them under this scenario. Very good. That's right. So, and where are we when we're in the fifth trumpet? Where are we on our timeline? Are we in the first 1,260 days or the second 1,260 days? Okay, so wait, we'll work that out on a timeline next time, and then you'll get to see what we're saying. Okay. It'll answer it. This is what's really, really awesome about doing a study in Revelation. Well, it's both frustrating and awesome. The frustrating part is you have to wait long enough to get all the answers ironed out, but eventually you do get there. And it's okay if we don't have it all figured out right now, and even if we're off on something right now, you can go back in the race, right, and move it. And I can tell you, there are a lot of things I have erased and moved over the years. Even from one time, I mean, this is probably my fourth or fifth time through on studying. It's my third time here. I did it twice before. So this is my fifth time through in Revelation. I'm still learning new stuff. Yeah, all I can say is you just keep growing, and that's the good thing. Okay, so these 144,000 are not hurt. I want to put that, and we know these are the Jewish people here, the 144,000 who were sealed, right? And now here we see, this is where, oh, you're in a room full of women, buddy. That was something that shouldn't have been spoke out loud. Okay, so because it says that the locusts that they do not hurt those with the seal of God, right? Then we know already that that's speaking of those 144,000, that during this time of the trumpet, they're not harmed. That means you're right. They're still on the earth during this trumpet. So that's very helpful information. How long did the locusts hurt people? 5 months. Now, so what's interesting is we know that at least in this particular trumpet, it's a period of at least 5 months. Okay, that's the only one that we really get a real clear time factor on. The others are a little more hazy. Yeah, right. The other times, there are some times where it says, and it comes quickly or it comes shortly. So you know it's a shorter period of time, like between the 6th and the 7th trumpet, it's quick. But here it says 5 months. Okay, so now we know that the angel of the abyss is king over them. And I added that, but it's not super important to have that. Oh, first woe. Thank you. Let's add that in. Whoa. This is our first woe, right? And since we know that, what do we know about this? This is our second woe, and this is our third woe. Well, we do because it has to fall sequentially. And we know that he said it's the next three trumpets that sound. Yeah, you'll buy for that one. I'm glad we talked you into that. See? You're being tormented. Yeah. You just wait till you get home. Okay. The 6th trumpet is what? 4 angels. 4 angels at Euphrates. And they kill 1/3 of man. Does it say men or man? Okay, you're out of here. Okay, and they have an army. Their army is how much? Okay, and they're killed how? Right, fire, smoke, and brimstone. And men do not repent, but the women do. Okay. Okay, now here comes the complication part. We don't have time to really cover it thoroughly, but she gave us on our chart, when you get to the 7th trumpet, she gave you some boxes, right? If you disagree with any of those boxes, just do what I did. Use liquid whiteout and move them because there are something. What happens is one of the things that she does is she goes back into chapter 12 and also into chapter 11 and also in chapter 14. All of those are either parentheses or worships. So just because they're stated there does not mean that's where they go on that 7th trumpet. Did you understand that? Well, remember, it's what we do know though is in that Satan is cast down, and it tells us there's a verse, a specific verse for us that says, woe, in chapter 12, right? Woe to the earth because he's been cast down. Well, we know we're looking for our third woe because it wasn't stated. We know that this is the third woe then. Woe to the earth. Satan is cast down. But we got that information from chapter 12, verses 10 and 12, right? And that falls within that parentheses of the 3 signs. So what we are doing is using our logic, and we're saying, where does it fit? Oh, it has to be the 7th trumpet because that's where the other woe is. So we now know that that event happens there. But there's more information given to us in chapter 12, all kinds of information about the woman, about Satan, about a fall, about later another war with the angels in heaven. Do they all go in that place on the timeline? No, exactly, which makes our point. When you're in the parentheses of those 3 signs, you have to use your logic and reason to figure out where they go on a timeline. And if you can't figure it out at this point, wait till we have more cross-referencing, and then later things will be made more clear for you. We know, for instance, Satan had an initial fall, and 1/3 of the angels fell with him. When did that happen? It had to happen even before the creation of man, right? Because what happens in the garden, or at least at the beginning of the creation of the earth and man, somewhere in there, right? because then where is Satan seen in chapter 3 of Genesis? In the garden doing what? Tempting Satan. So he's already fallen. So it's sometime before that, that this event happens. So that's what I'm saying about using your reason. But that falls also in chapter 12.
Where you're saying, the falling there, it falls, but he's free to go back and forth at this point, right? Because
No,
he's
no,
in front of the throne and
no.
choosing all the time.
Yeah, but this is a distinctive point.
At this point, it's no more going back.
That's right. No more going back up. Woe to the earth. And he says he has how much time? He has a short time. And it was that 12:11 or 12? Okay, 12:12. He has a short time. So we're going to figure out more information on that later. We're not really there yet. And we haven't even actually address chapter 12 until next week, but you have to have it for the woe to be completed. Number one, I want you to know that I whited out a couple of these boxes and replaced them with things that I felt actually went there, because it's confusing if you fill in the box with that information underneath the seventh trumpet, if it's not information that actually happens at that seventh trumpet. And she doesn't distinguish it. I know, I know, because she wanted you to notice certain statements that were made and place them in. And because in the unfolding reading of it, that's where they fell, she put them there. But that was an error. We know that. I think she knows it too, but she's just trying to help you make observations of certain things and then later iron out what's right and what's wrong about it.
Yeah, she also put a box at the end of the sixth trumpet about the witnesses.
Oh, yeah. Yes. It's coming. Yeah. 11. What happens to the two witnesses in that sixth trumpet? At the end of the sixth trumpet.
So is that what that comes?
Is that the sixth trumpet?
Where the witnesses are resurrected?
What does it say? Go open up your observation worksheet to chapter 11, and you are in the sixth trumpet, verse. Okay, there's a mention of 1,260 days. And what had they done? What had the two witnesses done? They prophesied for 1,260 days. And what happens to them here?
Well, that's after they're taken up.
Now they're raptured. So when did they do their witnessing? Before or after they were raptured? Yeah. So that box tells you where the witnesses are taken up. They're taken up at the end of the sixth trumpet. Sixth trumpet. So I'm just going to draw a picture here. Nope. But what's very interesting is how quickly is it coming after the sixth trumpet? What is it? How does it close there in verse 14? The second woe is past. Behold, what? The third woe is coming quickly. So apparently these two woes here, the sixth and seventh trumpet, are happening very rapidly, one almost on top of the other. They are distinctive for events, but what I see then is that whatever's happened here is a catalyst for the things that are going to start happening here. What happens here? Satan is cast down, right, to the earth, right? Here, what happened? The witnesses are taken up. So that means now the physical presence of witnesses is removed and Satan is coming down, and he is beginning to now have his short time, and he's going to begin to really seriously persecute, right? The church and, not the church, the believers on the earth at that time. So what you can see are these two apparently are really quick together. They're almost, when we do a timeline, we're going to do sixth and seventh, and they're going to fall like this, just right. And this is going to be that middle point where things begin to translate, or well, actually it's right here. But this sixth and seventh happen almost one on top of the other, it looks like, because one affects the other one in a very profound way. And when Satan comes down there, he says, let's go on in chapter 11, 2, what does it say happens? Okay, go on. Go away. Okay. 42 months, and how long is that? 3.5 years. So Satan is cast down, and for 42 months, he and his cohorts are going to have 42 months to trample the city and the temple. So that means that when you hit this middle point here, once that 7th trumpet is complete, Satan begins his dealings right here. Okay, we're going to see it much more clearly. Also, my 2 witnesses will have done what? Will have prophesied. So where have they done their prophesying? 1,260 days of witnessing over here. Who else witnesses besides the 2? The 144,000. The beast will kill them. After 3 days, they will go up to heaven. Then there's another earthquake. So we close this out with an earthquake. Okay. So next week, we will cover much more details on. So what I want to instruct you to do this week is make sure you go back and look at all your time references and make a complete list and make a stab on your own at doing a timeline as to where things are happening. We already have looked at it and said, we know our 2 witnesses are over here. They get killed here at the end of this 6th one. And at the same time, then Satan comes down. So these 2 events are happening really succinctly, very quickly upon one another. They get caught up, Satan comes down, and now he begins his agenda. And he has how long? 42 months. A short time. He knows it. Okay. Okay, that's our review of what we looked at this week. Woohoo! I know. Well, it's good. I mean, did you find it beneficial to be doing this review? Especially with the Christmas break, right? Okay, good. I'm glad you're not feeling disappointed, because what has happened is Precept has allowed for 3 weeks for new students to get on board with us. Could you imagine trying to get on? Or slow learners like me. And for the teacher to relearn. All right, thank you guys. It was good to see you all.